An artist you love has just put out a new album and they've announced a number of different limited edition variants of the record. You order one, it arrives at your house, it looks nothing like the picture. Why is this? Today we're going to get into it. I've come up with 10 reasons why the record you order looks nothing like the picture. So if you've been around vinyl for a while, you've probably had the experience where you've bought a vinyl variant and it's arrived looking nothing like the picture, but I wanted to create something for people who are maybe newer to the hobby, and even for people who maybe have steered away from variants in the past because they find it a little gimmicky or they prefer black vinyl. Even me, who owns a number of these variants and has been well aware for many years, I learned a lot doing the research for this video and I wanted to share some of my findings. The reason I wanted to make this video is I recently saw a number of people on TikTok were buying the new Rina Sawayama album and they were ordering variants and they were showing the kind of expectation versus reality, and what they got looked nothing like the picture. And there's a number of reasons for this, and I think one of the first things it comes down to is how records are actually made. So vinyl is made out of vinyl, little tiny PVC pellets that are melted and fed through an extruder that gives you a little puck. That is then put into a record press, it goes down, and then you're left with a record. To get different effects, different types of vinyl, different colors are mixed in during the extruding process, and even after the pucks are made, to get different things like split vinyl or vinyl that's 3 colors, or maybe records that have a different effect in the middle of them, are done by actually chopping up the pucks and smashing them together, then using that to press the record. A lot of the research I did for this video was actually done on the Furnace Record Pressing Plant website. They have a fantastic FAQ that is geared towards artists who are looking to get their records pressed, who maybe have very ambitious ideas about what variants they want, but they give you very clear explanations of why maybe they should temper their expectations, what colors work best with other colors, and maybe why they should or shouldn't do certain options, and kind of steering them towards more tried and true methods that will save time, money, and give an ultimately better product in the end. I also think that it's worth noting that basically every time you buy a variant record online, there is a disclaimer that the record will probably look different than what you get. Variant records are always a work of art, they're one of a kind, so maybe it won't look exactly like the picture. Maybe you think that your effect looks crappy, but again, this is something that a person is having to make themselves. It's not always their fault. Sometimes the machines aren't working properly. Sometimes the puck that they're given maybe is missing one of the colors, or maybe it's much more dominant on another. It's always a crapshoot, but I mean, I think that's part of the fun of it, and always seeing just how close it can get. With that being said, let's get into it. The first reason why your record does not look like the one online: the label that sold it to you never actually saw the record. So right now, given the current timelines that are kind of plaguing the vinyl industry, it can be anywhere from a year between the point of when a record is ordered to when it actually gets pressed and delivered. This means that if you pre-order a record, there's a good chance that the person you're buying from has never seen it and it does not exist yet. They're going off of a mock-up or their best guess of what the record might look like. If they're getting it pressed at a plant and they're doing a design that's been done in the past, they perhaps have been provided with a picture that is the same as something that has been done successfully. Oftentimes, artists these days want stuff to match the aesthetic and the color directly, so they have to get stuff that's specially made. And sometimes this is a total guess, and record presses don't have the most time in the world. And what ends up happening is you get something that is not quite as expected. There are, however, a number of labels like Vinyl Me Please who seem to get the records in, take photos, and sell off of that instead of doing the guess. So you are more likely to get a more accurate result going through companies like that. But often it's kind of like buying a McDonald's hamburger. You know what the picture looks like. You've seen it in a commercial. When you get it, it might have all the elements there, but maybe it's smashed. Maybe the ketchup's off to the side. Maybe they only give you 1 pickle instead of 2. It's just kind of pictured the same way. And I mean, if you're buying it online, it's like buying anything online. Like, imagine it's like you're buying clothes online. You never know what you're really gonna get. So this Death from Above record was sold as being a split orange and white like creamsicle vinyl. It was pressed by Third Man Records, and as you can see, it's a total mess. I thought it was going to be solid orange. Turns out it's translucent orange, and what's left in the middle is what looks like someone put milk into like their cream soda and it curdled. It's just absolutely disgusting. I still kind of like it, although the effect looks absolutely nothing like I thought it would look like when I ordered it. Next one is the worldwide shortage of colored vinyl. Usually the variants have some form of colored vinyl in them, and right now, again with the supply chain issues, it's just getting tougher and tougher to get colored vinyl. So this means that sometimes they might not use as much of it, or it might be a little bit tougher to get the colors exactly right, and they might just have to go with what they've come up with. And the next point is that the plant simply cheaped out because it is more expensive. Maybe they had a lot of blue on hand and the record needed more green, but they added more blue into the mix, knowing that it would save them a bit of money and that this is only one of the 30 other records they're pressing that day. Who cares if only 100 people get it and it doesn't look exactly correct. This one's super funny. This is Piper's Gentle Breeze. This was listed as being a splatter vinyl, and you look at the one side and wow, they nailed it. Absolutely gorgeous. You flip it over, they forgot to put the spiral on the other side, and it's basically just pure white and a little bit sticking through the other side. This one's from the same series. This is Momoko Kikuchi's Adventure, and it's also a they did the same effect where they only did the splatter on one side, but because it's translucent, you can't tell and it looks awesome. Another one is that the record pressing plants are working too fast. The biggest complaint from record fans over the last few years has been the decline of quality control, where they're getting records that are dirty, they're dusty, they have fingerprints, maybe they're full of clicks and pops because the plant workers are just firing one record on, getting it off, firing it on, getting it off, not taking the full time to process it. And when you're talking about variants, oftentimes it's a limited edition of 100, 150 or something. So what maybe you spent 40 bucks on to get a special product was only 5 minutes out of a plant worker's day. So it's like they couldn't care less. Maybe they just need to fire through as fast as possible, and what you got wasn't exactly what you wanted. Next is not properly cleaning equipment. So when the record extruder presses the pucks, there's some vinyl that's going to be left in the machine, and oftentimes you will see that records have little bits of different colors that do not belong in them. On the furnace record pressing plant, they mentioned that you can pay an extra fee to get the extruder cleaned before your record to make sure that it's pristine. And I think a lot of plants, they just don't bother with this step, or artists don't know that they should be doing it, so they don't do it, and what you're left with are these kind of defects. Also, I'd like to point out that on the kind of in the dead wax area, there's a lot of black. So I think that the machine was not cleaned properly beforehand. And you'll always see this with white vinyl where it's a lot more prevalent if there are defects in other colors, and this one was very, very obvious. Next is that they can't replicate the color properly. So usually the PVC pellets come in a number of more standard colors, but if you're trying to match your album cover, for example, there's probably a special Pantone, and you'll have to mix some of those vinyl pellets trying to get a different color, and that can be a very timely and expensive process. So sometimes it's obvious that the record label just did it the best they could and said, frick it, we're pressing them as is. This is one of my favorite vinyl releases ever, just because the color is so awkward. This is Mac DeMarco's Here Comes the Cowboy. This is the indie store exclusive. It said it was emerald green, but it's just the most like disgusting puke colored like ever. I'm like, there's no way in hell this is what they were going for. I think that what they were trying to do is get it closer to like this kind of turquoise that's on the album cover, and it just didn't work. And then they're like, oh, well, we'll call it emerald green instead. That'll like convince people this is what they're supposed to be getting. Also, some colors and effects just don't mix. So when they're mixing the vinyl, sometimes they use different kinds of PVC that have different melting points that give you some different effects, like a smoke vinyl. So this is the first record by the Stooges, and you can see it has this awesome sort of smoke effect, and that's basically done by using a clear vinyl and using a darker vinyl with a higher melting point, and as it melts slower, it gives you kind of this smoky swirl. But oftentimes you see these records and it's just like, it's a mess, and it's because sometimes the colors swallow other colors. Dark colors don't mix well with light colors. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and what you're left with is just a mess. Also, some effects are very subtle. On the mock-up or the picture that you see online, it might look like, wow, this record it looks almost camouflage, it's so smoky, but then when you get it, it looks like a solid color, and you might have to hold it up to light to even get any of the effect. This is one of the 4,000 variants of Taylor Swift's Folklore that were released. I remember opening it and I was like, okay, that's solid vinyl, but if you hold it up to the light, you get a much more pronounced kind of smoke color to it. So very, very subtle, but does not immediately pop. As I mentioned earlier, some colors don't mix. Well, some colors just dominate others, where if you try to mix one with the other, doesn't work. Maybe you try to do a swirl or you try to do a splatter vinyl with different colors and they just aren't visible in it, and it's just because they don't work together. This is a Record Store Day Black Friday. This is the Sword, The Age of Winters, the 15th anniversary edition. Very cool color, but on the label it says that it is purple frost color vinyl. So what I'm guessing they tried to do was mix like a dark purple with like some grays and maybe some blues, but what it looks like in the end is a solid like dark blue purple with some very, very minor effects. I think the colors just didn't work. This isn't necessarily rocket science, but instead of getting the effect you wanted, you basically just end up with a solid color. And lastly, the photo that you saw is in the perfect situation and not how the record will actually be used. Interesting is that the perfect backgrounds, the perfect lighting, and really expensive photography are often used to capture these records, when in reality, you might be looking at it on your turntable or holding in your hands versus on a white background, and they look completely different, and sometimes this just makes the records appear different. So that is it. Those are the reasons why your record may not look like the picture that you saw online. Did you learn anything? Is there anything I'm missing? I'd love to start a discussion below if you have any other feedback. I'd also love to hear about the records that you've ordered that don't look the same, because I have a few myself, but I'm always interested in checking on seeing just how bad the results really were from the record pressing plant. So thank you so much for watching. Take care.